You can travel after we're gone, my mother said without looking up from the dog bowls. Right now, this family needs someone responsible. Then my father slid the house keys across the table. The dogs need feeding twice a day. The cats can't be left alone. Water the plants every morning. Stay here until we get back. Meanwhile, my parents, my sister, her husband, and even my cousins were leaving for a 2-week vacation I'd secretly been saving all year to join. When I quietly asked, "Why am I the only one being left behind?" my sister laughed. "Because that's your job." I simply smiled and said no. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my life, my family had only one definition for me: reliable. Not loved the most. Not celebrated the loudest. Not asked what I wanted. Just reliable. Reliable people don't complain. Reliable people don't ruin family plans. Reliable people cancel their own lives whenever someone else needs them. For years, I wore that label like a badge of honor. I believed being dependable meant I was important. It took me far too long to realize there was a difference between being appreciated and being taken for granted. I worked as a project manager for a software company in Chicago. My job paid well, but it demanded long hours and constant deadlines. Still, somehow, no matter how busy I became, my parents always assumed my schedule was the easiest to interrupt. Need someone to drive grandma to her appointment? Emily can do it. Need someone to watch the dogs? Emily's free. Need someone to water the plants for 2 weeks? Emily doesn't mind. No one ever asked. They simply informed me. Whenever I tried to explain that I already had plans, my mother would smile that familiar, disappointed smile. Family comes first, sweetheart. Those 4 words had controlled nearly every major decision I'd made as an adult. 3 years earlier, I'd canceled a weekend trip with friends because my parents suddenly decided to visit my aunt in Arizona. The year before that, I'd skipped a certification course that could have helped my career because my sister wanted someone to watch her golden retriever while she and her husband went skiing. Every holiday somehow turned into extra work for me. While everyone else laughed in the backyard, I grilled the food. While everyone else opened presents, I cleaned the kitchen. While everyone else relaxed, I walked the dogs, fed the cats, watered the flowers, and made sure nothing was forgotten. No one ever said thank you. They acted as if it was simply my role. And somehow, I believed them. This year was supposed to be different. 8 months earlier, my company had selected me to attend one of the biggest leadership conferences in Seattle. It wasn't just another work trip. It was my opportunity. Executives from across the country would be there. Networking, training, potential promotions. After the conference ended, I'd planned something I'd never done before. A 4-day vacation. Just me. A quiet hotel overlooking Puget Sound. Coffee shops. Bookstores. A whale-watching tour I'd already paid for. I had saved every extra dollar for nearly a year. For once, I was choosing myself. I didn't tell my parents immediately. Experience had taught me that sharing good news too early usually meant someone found a way to ruin it. 2 weeks before my flight, Mom called. "Family dinner Sunday," she announced. No excuses. I almost laughed. She hadn't asked if I was available. She'd assumed I would be. Sunday evening, I walked into my parents' dining room carrying a blueberry pie. Dad was smiling wider than usual. My older sister, Rachel, and her husband, Tyler, were already there. Even my cousins had shown up. Something was clearly happening. Dinner ended unusually fast. Dad stood up and clinked his glass. "I've got exciting news." Rachel grinned. Mom reached across the table and squeezed his hand dramatically. "We're finally taking the family vacation we've talked about for years." Everyone cheered. Dad pulled out glossy brochures. A beautiful beach resort in Florida. 14 days. Oceanfront rooms. Boat tours. Restaurants. Sunsets. The entire family had been invited. Everyone except me. At first, I assumed there had been some mistake. Then Mom slid a ring of house keys across the table. "The dogs need breakfast at 7 and dinner at 6. Dad added another list. "The cats stay inside. Water the roses every morning. The orchids every other day." Rachel smiled as though she were doing me a favor. "The mail comes around noon." I stared at the papers. No one had mentioned my conference. No one had even asked whether I had plans. Finally, I looked up. What about my trip? Silence. Mom blinked. What trip? The conference in Seattle.
Oh.
She waved a hand dismissively. You can go another time. I frowned. I've already paid for everything. Dad folded his arms. This vacation's been planned for months. So has my conference. Rachel rolled her eyes. It's just work. It isn't just work. It is compared to family. I looked around the table. Every face expected me to agree, to smile, to surrender, like I always had. I took a slow breath. What if someone else stays? Rachel laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, come on. There are 6 adults going. So, why am I the only person expected to cancel everything? Rachel leaned back in her chair. Because you're the responsible one. I shook my head. That's not an answer. Dad's voice became firmer. Emily, don't make this difficult. I'm asking a simple question. Mom sighed dramatically. The dogs know you. They know all of us. The plants need daily care. So, hire someone. The room became completely quiet. Rachel stared at me as if I'd spoken another language. Hire someone, she repeated. Yes. Dad frowned. Why would we waste money when you're available? I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. Available. Not because I actually was. Because they had decided I should be. Rachel crossed her arms. You don't have kids. Tyler nodded. You aren't as busy as everyone else. I almost smiled. I worked 60-hour weeks. Rachel hadn't worked full-time in nearly 4 years. Yet, somehow, I was the one with nothing important. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. Honestly, Emily, that's your role in this family. Not daughter. Not sister. Not equal. A role. Like I existed to make everyone else's life easier. For the first time in years. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't try to convince anyone. Instead, I quietly stood up. Every conversation stopped. Dad looked confused. Where are you going? Home. Mom frowned. We're still talking. I know. I picked up my purse. I've heard enough. Dad's voice hardened. So you're refusing? I looked at every person sitting around that table. People I'd spent years sacrificing for. People who couldn't sacrifice even one vacation day for me. Then I smiled. A calm, peaceful smile that surprised even me. I'm going to Seattle. Rachel scoffed. No, you're staying here. I gently placed the house keys back onto the dining table. The metal clink echoed through the silent room.
No.
Just one word. No yelling. No insults. No drama. Simply,
No.
I turned around and walked toward the front door. Behind me, voices erupted all at once. Emily, come back. Don't be ridiculous. This conversation isn't over. I never turned around. For the first time in my adult life, I chose myself. An hour later, my suitcase was packed. By sunrise, I was sitting in an airport terminal with a cup of coffee in one hand and my boarding pass in the other. As the plane lifted into the clouds, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Freedom. I smiled, closed my eyes, and watched my hometown disappear beneath the wings. I had no idea that less than 24 hours later, an unknown number would appear on my phone, and one sentence from the caller would change everything. The conference had just finished its second morning session when my phone vibrated across the table. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I stepped into the hallway and answered. Hello. Good morning, ma'am. My name is Officer Daniel Brooks with the Lakewood Police Department. Am I speaking with Emily Carter? My stomach tightened. Yes. I'm calling regarding your parents' residence. For one terrifying second, I thought someone had been hurt. Is everyone okay? They're fine. They're currently out of state, correct? Yes.
He paused.
We've recovered 2 dogs from the neighborhood after a gate was left open during last night's storm. I blinked. Our dogs? Yes, ma'am. They're okay? They're perfectly fine. A neighbor recognized them and contacted us. Relief washed over me. Then confusion followed. I'm sorry. Why are you calling me? Your number was listed as the emergency contact. Of course it was. Even when I wasn't expected to have my own life, I was expected to solve theirs. I understand, I said carefully, but I wasn't responsible for the house. Another pause. The responding neighbor mentioned your family believed you were staying there. I told them I wasn't. I see. His voice became noticeably gentler. In that case, all we need is confirmation that someone will collect the animals. My parents should arrange that. I'll note it. Before hanging up, he added kindly, the dogs really are fine. Thank you, officer. As the call ended, another one came immediately.
Mom.
Then Dad. Then Rachel. 5 missed calls appeared before I even slipped my phone into my pocket. I knew exactly why they were calling.
Not because they were worried about me, because they suddenly needed me.
I waited until lunch before listening to the first voicemail. Emily. Mom sounded furious. What were you thinking? The neighbor said you never stayed at the house. I skipped to the next one. Dad's voice was even louder. The dogs got out. We had to spend half the morning dealing with the police from 3 different states away. Then Rachel. I hope you're happy. Mom's crying, Dad's yelling, and our vacation is ruined. I laughed quietly, not because any of it was funny, because after years of sacrificing everything, the first crisis that happened without me somehow became my fault.
My phone buzzed again.
This time it was a text from Mom. Call US now. Another. This is your responsibility. I stared at the words for several seconds, then typed exactly 1 sentence. I told all of you 2 weeks ago that I would not be staying at the house. I pressed send. Almost immediately, the phone rang again. I answered. Dad didn't even say hello. How could you leave knowing those animals depended on you? I didn't leave them. What? I declined the job. You don't get to decline family responsibilities. I took a slow breath. No, Dad. For the first time in my life. I do. There was complete silence on the other end. Then Dad spoke again, slower this time. So, you're really choosing work over your own family? I looked through the conference center's glass windows at the Seattle skyline. No, I answered calmly. I'm choosing the plans I made before you volunteered my time without asking. Mom suddenly grabbed the phone. We've sacrificed everything for you. I almost smiled. Have you, Emily?
No, Mom.
Think about it. I lower my voice. How many birthdays have I spent cleaning your house while everyone else celebrated? Neither of them answered. How many vacations have I canceled? Silence. How many weekends have I given up because someone decided I should? Dad cleared his throat. That's different. Why? Because you're dependable. There it is again.
What?
Dependable. I laughed softly. Do you know what that word has meant in this family? Neither of them spoke. It means everyone else's time matters. My time doesn't. It means everyone else's plans are respected. Mine are negotiable. It means everyone gets to live their own lives. Except me. Mom's voice became emotional. We didn't know you felt this way. I've tried telling you. When? The dozens of times I said I already had plans. You always ended up helping. Because saying no always turned into 3 days of guilt. No one argued. Because they couldn't. They knew it was true. Dad finally sighed. So, what are we supposed to do now? I answered without hesitation. Hire a professional pet sitter. They're expensive. So, is asking someone to give up 2 weeks of their life. The call ended without another word. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. That afternoon, I attended every workshop I'd traveled across the country to see. Instead of staring at my phone every 5 minutes, I actually listened. I introduced myself to executives, shared ideas, exchanged business cards. By the end of the conference, my manager pulled me aside. I've been watching you all week. I smiled nervously. In a good way, I hope. He laughed. Very good. Then, he handed me an invitation to interview for a senior leadership position opening later that year. It came with a salary increase large enough to change my future. If I had stayed home, I never would have been there. When the conference ended, I checked into the small waterfront hotel I'd booked months earlier. That evening, I sat outside with a cup of coffee while ferries crossed Puget Sound. For the first time in years, no one needed anything from me. No dogs to feed. No plants to water. No grocery lists. No emergency errands. Just silence. Peaceful, beautiful silence. Of course, my phone kept buzzing. Rachel had sent 12 text messages. Some angry.
Some sarcastic.
One simply read, "Hope your vacation is worth destroying this family." I didn't answer. Instead, I turned my phone over and watched the sunset disappear behind the mountains. The next 3 days became some of the happiest I'd experienced in years. I explored bookstores, walked along the waterfront, took the whale-watching tour I'd dreamed about. For once, I wasn't surviving someone else's schedule. I was finally living my own. The morning before my flight home, my phone vibrated one last time. A voicemail from Dad. His voice sounded colder than I'd ever heard it. "When you get back." He paused for several long seconds. "Don't expect things to be the same around here." I slowly slipped the phone back into my pocket. Looking out across the water, I realized something unexpected. He was right. Things weren't going to be the same anymore. And for the first time in my life, I was completely okay with that. My flight landed just after noon. As I drove toward my parents' house, Dad's voicemail kept replaying in my head. "Don't expect things to be the same around here." For years, words like that would have filled me with anxiety. This time, they didn't. If anything, I felt strangely calm. I parked in the driveway and noticed every car was already there.
Mom, Dad,
Rachel, Tyler, even my aunt and uncle. Apparently, my return had become another family meeting. I took one slow breath before walking inside. The conversation stopped the moment I entered. No one smiled. Dad folded his arms. "So, you finally decided to come home." "I came home because my trip ended." Mom stood first. "I can't believe you embarrassed this family." I quietly set my suitcase beside the wall.
"How?"
"You abandoned us." "I told you I wasn't staying." Rachel shook her head. "That's not the point." "Then what is?" "The point is family helps family." I looked at her for several seconds. "Interesting. What does that mean?" "It means I've been helping this family for over 10 years. No one answered. Dad pointed toward the dining table. "Sit down." "I'd rather stand." His jaw tightened. "We sacrificed our vacation because of you." I nodded slowly. "I'm aware." Mom's voice cracked. "Your father had to spend hours arranging emergency pet care. I suggested hiring a pet sitter before you left. They're expensive. So was asking me to give up 2 weeks of my life." The room became quiet. Rachel finally spoke. "You're making this about yourself." I couldn't help smiling. "For once, yes."
She stared at me.
"What happened to you?" I stopped believing that my life mattered less than everyone else's. Nobody expected that answer. For years, I had apologized first. Today, I wasn't apologizing. Instead, I reached into my purse. I brought something. Dad frowned. "What is it?" I placed a stack of printed papers on the dining table. Old text messages, emails, calendar screenshots. Years of them. Rachel looked confused. "What is all this?" "My cancel plans." Mom picked up the first page.
July.
Canceled concert. Needed to watch the dogs. The second page. Weekend hiking trip. Canceled. Water the garden. Third page. Professional certification class. Missed. House sitting. Fourth page. Birthday dinner. Canceled. Pick up grandma. Fifth page. Holiday weekend. Canceled. Watch Rachel's dog. Page after page. Year after year. There were dozens. I hadn't created those messages for today. I'd simply never deleted them. Dad slowly flipped through the stack. His face changed with every page. Rachel stopped smiling. Tyler quietly looked away. Finally, Mom whispered, "I didn't realize."
"No."
"You didn't." I kept my voice calm. "Because none of you ever asked what I gave up. You only noticed what I could do for everyone else." Dad rubbed his forehead. "Emily, when was the last time someone here asked me to dinner without needing a favor first?" No answer. When was the last time someone asked about my career? Silence. When was the last time anyone asked what made me happy? The room felt painfully still. Rachel finally spoke. We never meant to hurt you. I know. That surprised everyone. I don't think any of you woke up trying to make my life smaller. You just expected me to keep shrinking. Mom started crying. Real tears. I'm sorry. I believed she meant it, but something inside me had already changed. I appreciate hearing that. Then I reached into my bag one last time. This time, it wasn't papers. It was a folder. Dad looked confused. What's that? My apartment lease. Everyone looked up. I signed it 3 weeks ago. Rachel blinked. You're moving? I already have.
What?
I picked up the keys before I flew to Seattle. Mom looked stunned. You were planning this? I was planning my own life.
Dad stood.
You don't have to leave. I already have. I'll finish moving this weekend. Mom wiped her eyes. But holidays? I'll still visit. Birthdays? Of course. What about the pets? I smiled gently. You'll need to hire someone. Rachel laughed awkwardly. We've already started looking. I know. And honestly, the sitter charges less than I expected. For the first time all afternoon, everyone laughed. Even Dad. It wasn't a big laugh. Just enough to break the tension. Weeks passed. Then months. Moving into my own apartment felt strange at first. It was smaller than the family house. Quieter. But every decision inside those walls belonged to me. If I wanted to leave dishes until morning, I did. If I wanted to read until midnight, I did. If I wanted to spend an entire Saturday doing absolutely nothing, no one questioned it. The conference promotion came through 3 months later. I accepted the new position. The raise covered my rent easily. More importantly, it proved something to myself. The opportunity I'd almost sacrificed had changed my future. Around Thanksgiving, Mom called. Not to ask for a favor. Not to volunteer my weekend. Just to ask, would you like to come for dinner? I smiled. I'd love to. Then she added something I'd never heard before. If you're busy, we completely understand. I looked out the window of my apartment. The autumn leaves drifted quietly across the sidewalk. For years, that simple sentence would have sounded impossible. We understand.
Not.
You have to.
Not.
Family comes first. Just. We understand. When I arrived that Thanksgiving, something else had changed. The dogs had a professional walker. The plants were thriving. Rachel had actually volunteered to help clean after dinner. Dad loaded the dishwasher without being asked. The world hadn't ended because I stopped saying yes. It had simply adjusted. After dessert, Dad quietly walked onto the back porch where I was standing. I owe you an apology. I looked at him. You were right. We expected too much. I thought responsibility meant giving everything to your family. He shook his head. It doesn't. It means respecting the people you love. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled. I'm proud of you. Those 4 words, I'd waited my entire life to hear them. Driving home that night, I realized something important. Saying no hadn't destroyed my family. It had forced us to build a healthier one. Because real love isn't measured by how much of yourself you sacrifice. It's measured by how much your family respects the life you're trying to build. The day I finally stopped saying yes to everything wasn't the day I lost my family. It was the day I finally found myself.